Hello, and welcome to the 99th edition of Beer Issues. And my name is Matt Bruckert, and I'm coming to you live here from Casa de Bruckert on what I like to call the next two episodes, which are going to be Keg Day. And today we're going to be trying a very good beer from Oviedo Brewing Company. It is their Kitten Whispers, which is a sour Florida Weiss, also called a kettle sour with added lactose. Okay, so we're going to talk more about the beer, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pour it, because I do have a keg of it on tap, and it's always nice to get a nice fresh tap beer. Now you're going to look at this and you're going to say, what in the world, is that a red beer that Matt's pouring? Is that a red beer? That's the question. Well, yes, it's kind of a reddish, purplish beer, as you can see right there, with a absolutely perfect head right out of the keg. So we're going to let that sit for 1 second. We're going to talk a little bit about the beer, okay? So it's a beer that clocks in at 5.2% alcohol by volume. It's a local beer, so it hasn't made it to the beer enthusiasts and things like that. So we only reviews we can get on it is Untapped, and they rated it a 4 out of 5, which is a very good beer on Tapped. And I'll have to agree. I am not, as you know, we've talked about this before, I'm not a fan of the sour, but this, I'm telling you right now, is the best sour I've ever had, in my opinion. This is just my opinion, but it's the best sour I've had. Maybe there's sours out there that I haven't had that I might like, but this right here is a delicious sour. So let's talk about what is a kettle sour, okay? A kettle sour is not actually a style of beer. It's they call a means to an end, if you will. Kettle sour just refers to what it's brewed in, okay? So the kettle refers to the brew kettle that they do. They make they use a steel mash tun that they brew the beer, and that's where they ferment it, and then they ferment it and brew it in a similar tank, okay? Kettle sour just means quick souring. So what happens is the difference between a regular sour and a kettle sour is the kettle sour is done in the metal, and it can be sour to your liking in a couple of days. As to where a regular sour, when they use the bacteria, they use like wooden barrels, and it can take months to even years to get the right amount of sourness, okay? I'm going to take off my sunglasses so I can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So what they do when they make a sour is they add lacto or lactobacillus, which is what actually turns the sugars into the lactic acid, which is, I believe that's what makes it sour. It's getting all too scientific for me. I really enjoy the drinking part of it more than the science part of it, but I like to learn a little bit about beer as I'm talking about it. So they do this after they boil the beer, then they chill it until they get it to the desired sourness, and then they finish the brewing process. So let's go ahead, instead of just talking about beer, let's go ahead and sample it. Now this is a raspberry and blackberry kettle sour, like I said. So it's a sweet yet sour, and then the lactose, and the reason they call the beer Kitten Whispers is because it adds like a softness to the beer, if you will. It's not going to be like watery. It's going to be like smooth drinking. So it's got a consistency that's a little bit different because of the added lactose into the beer, okay? Now, I didn't smell that. Normally, I always smell the beer before I drink it, but needless to say, I've had a few of these, so I didn't. But I am going to talk about the smell. It's funny. You don't get much of a smell on the beer. You get you can smell like the raspberries, a real faint, light raspberry smell, but you don't get a sour smell. I don't really smell the blackberries, but blackberries don't have a real strong odor. But you do get a smell of the raspberries. They put a ridiculous amount of fruit when they're making this. I was talking to Nolan, the brewmaster at Oviedo Brewing Company, and he was telling me the amount of fruit that they put in there. And I don't know remember the specifics, so I don't want to tell you wrong. But they put a lot of fruit into this beer during the brewing process. But it is really phenomenal. If you ever really, got into drinking like Florida wheats or sours and stuff like that. Even if you haven't, this one's so far different than a lot of them. I mean, like I say, most sours I'm not a big fan of, but this one really is nice. And when you have one of them, then you might want another one, and then possibly even another one, because they're so delicious. And that sourness is kind of addicting. It's kind of like if you know when you eat a Jolly Rancher, you're like, oh, that's so good, I want another Jolly Rancher. Well, that's kind of how this beer is. It's got a sourness, a tartness that, you know, when you're drinking it, you're like, oh wow, it's sweet yet tart, but it's just, you want another and you want another and you want another. So I have a feeling this keg won't last this long, because not only do I enjoy it, but my lovely bride, she enjoys it also. So make sure, if you've enjoyed this, make sure you tell your friends about Beer Issues so they can, you know, enjoy all the fun that we're having with Beer Issues, and make sure they tell their friends so everybody knows about Beer Issues. And if you want any cool merchandise, like this cool hat or t-shirts or anything like that, make sure you go to shop.beerissues.com. And as my wife likes to say, I have beer issues.